Welcome to the Democratic debate.
The love fest between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. It was enjoyable. Enjoyably boring.
My favorite question was when they asked, why don't you just merge together and one of you be president, one of you be vice president? And Obama had a pretty good answer. He was like, I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves because those are two very different things, blah, 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 blah. And let's just wait and see what happens. And Hillary said, Obama says it makes a very good point. So if they continue this love fest, I see it happening. I really do.
Well, I think that Hillary needs to actually, if she wins the nomination, I think that Bill has really alienated a lot of the African Americans in the party, which is the base of the party around the country, them and women. And I think that if she wins the nomination, she needs to invite Barack as her VP candidate. Even if he denies it and says, no, I'd rather send the Senate, at least she needs to attempt but I don't think Barack has to do that. I think Barack's base isn't just Democrats. I mean, the African American is a big part of his campaign, but he's bringing in a ton of independent and even Republican registered voters.
On the CNN, what do they call it? Analysis. They said this during the debate, and they said this after the debate, and then they said it a couple of days after the debate, where they were comparing the kind of Democrats that people bring in. And they said Obama brings in the wine Democrats, the rich people.
Yep.
And Hillary brings in the
beer.
Yeah, well, the beer Democrats. But here's the way they describe. CNN described, not me. I'm quoting, but I do find it very interesting that this is the way CNN presents it. They say Obama brings in intelligent, rich Democrats.
They say intellectual, educated,
and so on.
Democrats.
Hillary brings in uneducated, poor Democrats. It's
basically Barack brings in the white collar and Hillary brings in the blue collar Democrats. That's how they describe
I frankly would find that offensive. It's basically Barack gets the smart rich people, Hillary gets the dumb poor people. That's what they're saying.
It's interesting that they're taking that off polls, but as we know, the polls have been really wrong the cycle. It's been wrong going back to 2000. So they can say that all they want, but what they're doing is they're stereotyping.
I don't think it's accurate because I know there's plenty of educated, intellectual people that are going for Hillary, and I know dumb people that like Obama. So
it's almost like CNN's pulling what John Edwards says is the two Americas. CNN's dividing the two Americas of the Democratic Party for the presidential run, and I think it's silly. I mean, if CNN has been following the Democratic side, which I know they have, they shouldn't be using the divisive terms that the Democrats have been talking about since the beginning of this race. So. But we should back to the debate. The debate was a wonderful love fest where, my brother and I were watching it together, and at the end, Hillary and Barack were sitting there talking, and you have no idea what they were saying to each other, but my brother's like, it'd be really funny if they were sitting there swearing at each other with these big smiles and happy faces, because nobody would know. And actually, it's interesting because earlier in the week we had the State of the Union, and there was the accusation that Barack wouldn't shake Hillary's hand. And so maybe that's something to do with it where Barack really complimented Hillary in this debate. I don't think he did. McCaskill of Missouri said that he had turned around to talk to her and had missed Hillary's hand, didn't see it, which I think is a logical
Yeah, but the pictures look so much better. The story of him snubbing her is much better. It's a much better story.
Well, it's more drama. I mean, it's more interesting.
It's better to say, Barack snubbed Hillary at the campaigns because they don't like each other and blah 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 and so on.
Yeah, it is more interesting. But there were some good lines I felt. I think Hillary had a great line when she said, it took a Clinton to fix the first Bush's mess, and it's going to take a Clinton to fix this Bush's mess. I think that was a really, really good line. I think
that's a good line. I liked it. Yeah, it was. It really seemed like they'd been trained. And I'm sure they had. They've been practicing all the questions. One of the question that had, I think, the best obviously prepared answer was, the question was, I think the person said, I'm 30-something years old, and I can't remember there ever not being a Bush or a Clinton in the White House. And the lady said, you're supposed to be,
talking about change.
Hillary, you're professing yourself to be an agent of change. How can you be an agent of change when you're just another Clinton? And Hillary's answer was, she laughed and everything,
Right.
her little thing. Some people like to call it a cackle. But
It wasn't the cackle. It was her better laugh.
But
She was more
but she more or less said, she was saying.
What I just said was the quote that I just said. That
No. She was saying you should look at individual people, what she's done. Don't judge me by what Bill's done. Kind of like when George Bush was running. Don't judge me by my father.
Yeah, because obviously,
And
as we
so
know,
Hillary's saying,
different.
don't judge me by Clinton.
By Bill, right?
By Bill. And she has a point. She has a point.
Yeah, the one interesting thing that I liked about the debate was that Barack over and over and over again emphasized that he was against the war from day one. And I think now that we're on to Super Tuesday, the Democratic base is anti-war. Now, not all the independents are, but many of the independents in this country are, and that are supporting Barack, and that's why they're supporting Barack. But it was interesting that that's what he emphasized, and I think it was important. I also wanted to note that I've been listening to the polls this week, and Barack, who was down by 20 to 30 points earlier in the fall in most of the states, now in California is only down by 10%. Now, the interesting thing about the Democratic Party that's different than the Republican Party in the primaries is that there's no winner-take-all state in the Democratic primaries.
And the Republicans, most of them are winner-take-all.
Right, most of them are. Well, up until this time, we've only seen Florida. Well, in Super Tuesday, there'd be more of them. Well, on the Democratic side, they're not. So Barack could have the most delegates after Super Tuesday by pulling what he did in Nevada. He didn't get most of the votes, but because of the way the Democrats split up the delegates, he could end up with the most delegates. And I've talked to people from that campaign and some of the others, and that's exactly what the Barack campaign is trying to do. In fact, they told me that in California, there's the best way to advertise is on TV because it's such a huge market, and you really can't do a viable grassroots campaign. Well, they've actually got one set up in California, and they've been able to bring from a 40-point deficit in California's polls down to a 10, and that they think by election day that they'll lose, but they'll lose by 1 or 2 points, and that they'll still be in the race because they'll have as many delegates or more if they have it set up right than Hillary does. So it's a very interesting race to watch.
Let me give you a real quick story. This Friday, I wanted my 8-year-old daughter to learn about politics and so on. So I called around to downtown Salt Lake and finding all the different offices because I was going to find one that we could go and do some volunteer work at. Huckabee doesn't have an office here. McCain doesn't have an office here. Romney doesn't have an office here. Paul doesn't have an office here. The only people with offices were Hillary and Obama.
And since he lives in a Republican state, since he lives in Utah, it's really interesting that in the state that he lives, there's 2 Democrats that are advertising and have offices while the Republicans don't even care.
Well, the Republicans assume Romney's going to win this state,
which is a viable
I don't
thought.
think they're wrong.
Yeah.
So I call up. Hillary's campaign more or less said, no, there's nothing you can do with your 8-year-old daughter. I'm like, okay, fine. So I call the Barack campaign, and they're like, yeah, sure, we'll give her something to do. Come on down. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I go down there. They have her color some stuff, and they give her some little stickers to tear up into slips when they go campaigning door to door. I made a couple of phone calls for her, while she was doing it, just so she could get an idea of what it was like volunteering, and it was pretty nice. And I did my early voting already, and because I live in Utah, I really like Ron Paul, but he's not going to win. And I also don't like the way he pretty much said, don't bother trying to do any work in Utah because Utah's going to go to Romney anyways. I thought that was kind of lame. And so, but he's right though. Utah is going to go to Romney.
Well, yeah.
So we don't have much time on this one. So I said, okay, since Romney's going to win the Republican race anyways, I'll go and vote in the Democratic race. And
which you normally wouldn't do.
It was really a tough call, but I ended up going with Obama, and just because I think he has the least amount of baggage. No, I'm not saying he's perfect, but he has the least amount of baggage.
The least amount of baggage. That's an interesting terminology there.